This week on Newt's News, an apology from the Israeli Prime Minister, the misinterpretation on social media of some news, and a tragedy which has befallen the entire world.
שהדברים שאמרתי לפני ימים אחדים פגעו בערביי ישראל. לא הייתה לי שום כוונה שכך יהיה. אני מצטער על כך.
The Prime Minister of Israel apologising for, amongst other things, sending an SMS out just before the election closed, warning that the Arab voters were coming, the Arab Israelis, and that all the Jews should rise up in greater numbers to vote for their Jewish leader. Of course, apologies aside, the reality remains that the Arabs are coming. It's just not necessarily Israeli ones.
Tel Aviv is just 9 miles in back of me. To the north, we have Hezbollah. To the east, we have ISIS. To the south, we have Hamas. Israel is in the forefront of the global war on terror.
An Israeli politician giving a very clear message to both Israelis, as if they need reminding, and the rest of the world, that it is Israel that is at the forefront of the war against terror, and perhaps the Americans and all other countries of the world should recognize that fact. And how more explicit could we possibly make it? As with so many things I've discovered during my week, this is what I found on Facebook a couple of days ago.
Come on! Come on! They got a fuck away from me! Throw it back! Throw it! Film it! Film it! Move up! Move up! No, sorry, he's move up!
Yes, this was a synagogue in North London. Yes, it was being attacked by non-Jews. And yes, it was a very ugly incident. But no, categorically, was it an anti-Semitic incident. It was simply a dispute between a Jewish teenager who was clearly upset by something and some non-Jews who'd been attending a party nearby and who were clearly the worse for drink. Now, my point here is that social media can play an extremely dangerous role in spreading fear and concern amongst Jews across the world that anti-Semitism is happening in places where it isn't. And Stamford Hill is a community predominantly surrounded and by non-Jews, particularly Muslims and Muslim-affiliated groups. They live very much hand-in-hand with Jews, religious Jews, and to a greater degree than many Jewish communities across the world, they live safely. Strange news coming out of Melbourne this week at the Altec College in Tregonina. The principal there, Omar Halak, has told The Age that he believes IS was a scheme by Israel and America to control oil in the Middle East. He said he doesn't specify to his students the countries that are involved, but he basically says that all of the IS military brigade are trained and equipped by them, and the evidence is the shiny new equipment, he said. And he simply says, we don't believe Muslims are creating IS. Now, I think that's more an aspirational comment than a belief, but it is concerning that a principal who holds such great influence over almost 2,000 pupils in Melbourne today can hold Israel responsible for IS in that way, and America too, for that matter. I fear that our children are not being educated at the standards that we would wish. I'm aware that the government spokesman have made statements that he doesn't support those comments, but he's also said there's nothing he can do to prevent the principal of a modern education college in Melbourne from saying that. This week, a Germanwings aircraft crashed into the Alps in France, killing everyone on board, hundreds of people, including the pilot and the co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, who we are told was responsible for this dreadful disaster. The anger and extraordinary fear in the faces of those parents and relatives who are waiting for their children is hard to imagine. But we feel their pain, even though we may well be removed from the immediate effects of it. We feel it because we all jump on planes every day. We have children and families who do the same. And simply believing that they could have been anyone related to any of us. Indeed, there was an Australian lady who, with her son, was making a trip. It turned out that that lady was a maternal child health nurse at a local government municipality not far from where I work. And of course, whilst that is an extremely distant connection to the disaster, it just drives home the fact that it could have been anyone we knew. Such a disaster and such a tragedy did befall the Jewish community, and the pain and dreadful effects of that awful tragedy was felt very clearly earlier this week.
At 23 minutes after midnight, the fire department received a call for a fire in a home behind me here at 3371 Bedford.
7 children from an Orthodox Jewish family in New York were killed.
The children that have died are between the ages of 5 and 15. It apparently was a hot plate that are used to keep food warm. Hot plate was left on. A malfunction occurred and the fire started in the kitchen.
Hot plates are used by religious Jews every Shabbat across the world. They are an integral part of keeping one's Shabbat meal warm and observing the rules of Shabbat that you shouldn't light a fire. The fact that this should be the spark of the tragedy makes us wonder, how do you carry on believing in your faith, following the rules, when tragedy befalls you?
It will be a terrible Shabbat for everybody in the neighborhood. You always think that this fire happens in different neighborhoods, never close to home, but now it hits home.
I know the mother, and I really hope that, I don't know if she makes it through this. I don't know how she's going to face what happened to her family. I pray that she has the sanity. I don't know what to say.
Some extraordinary scenes appeared online in the hours that followed this tragic event, and I wanted to share those with you, as it almost seemed that the whole Jewish community was caught up in this, wherever we were.
I received a phone call last night from a man from Haifa who said that they found out in Shul by Arbit that 7 Jewish children died in America. The entire congregation sat down and cried.
Not now. Slowly. 1 second.
By offering support, by standing with them, and by somehow sharing the grief felt by the family, we are carrying out some cathartic act that we have done for centuries.
God only gives tests to those that can handle it, and so many people prove that it's just, I cannot imagine it.
The rules of Shabbat are no different to the requirements of the rules of dealing with the bereaved. It is this test that we are referring to that I question. How do you continue with your faith when you are tested in this way?
You have to surrender. Surrender. You have to do what's best for the child. That's what Hashem wants.
This man does not have a co-pilot to blame for the loss of his children. As a result of a simple act of compliance with the rules of Shabbat, a spark in a faulty appliance has led to the death of almost his entire family and everything he loves. However, he hasn't lost his faith, and from all accounts, the people around him are using that faith to support him and, no doubt, his family for the rest of time. Very quickly, the bodies were taken to Israel and were buried. And so the Jewish community, I believe, understands far more about the loss of life and how to react and respond to it than perhaps many others. And that we should all learn from this dreadful event.